You my brothers and sisters, one of the biggest misconceptions we sometimes carry is the idea that Islam wants us to be kind to absolutely everyone in every situation, regardless of who they are or what they do. This is not entirely true. Yes, kindness is a hallmark of a believer. Yes, mercy is central to our faith. But Islam is also a faith of wisdom, balance and justice. Allah Almighty has taught us that kindness is not blind. It is purposeful. It has boundaries. It has conditions. And sometimes the most merciful thing you can do is not to show kindness at all. Allah says in the Quran, do not incline towards those who do wrong, lest the fire should touch you. This means if someone is oppressive, abusive, spreading corruption, destroying lives, Allah does not want you to smile at them and pretend everything is fine. That is not kindness, that is weakness. Real kindness is when your heart seeks goodness, but your mind is guided by wisdom. Too many times people are told, just forgive, just be kind, just tolerate. And while forgiveness is indeed a great virtue, it is not to be misused as a blanket excuse for allowing harm, oppression, or abuse. The Prophet himself forgave often, but when people crossed limits, when injustice was being done, he stood firm. He spoke out, he corrected, he even distanced himself when it was necessary. That too was a form of mercy. Mercy for the community, mercy for the oppressed, mercy for the one who might otherwise continue in sin. So my brothers and sisters, Islam does not want you to be kind to evil. Islam does not want you to be kind to injustice. Islam does not want you to smile at someone who mocks Allah and His Messenger. Islam does not want you to be soft towards those who deliberately abuse you and trample over your dignity again and again. That is not the mercy Islam teaches. That is self-destruction. We must learn to differentiate between being kind and being navi. Being kind is when you treat people with respect, gentleness and fairness, but you still uphold the boundaries Allah has set. Being navi is when you let others walk over you in the name of kindness. Islam teaches us dignity. A believer is honorable. A believer has self-respect. And self-respect means knowing when to be soft and when to be firm. Remember, the Prophet said, the strong person is not the one who can wrestle others down. The strong one is the one who controls himself in anger. Controlling anger does not mean tolerating oppression forever. It means channeling your strength in the right way, at the right time, with wisdom. Sometimes that strength means walking away. Sometimes it means cutting someone off silently. Sometimes it means speaking the truth firmly, even if it hurts. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah loves mercy. But He also loves justice, and you cannot have mercy without justice. You cannot be kind to everyone and ignore the commands of Allah. You cannot love what Allah hates. You cannot support what Allah forbids. That is not kindness, a compromise, and a believer does not compromise on the truth. So stop being kind to everyone. Be kind where Allah loves kindness. Be firm where Allah commands firmness. Be merciful where mercy is deserved, and be strong where strength is required. That is true Islam. That is true faith. That is what will protect your dignity, your soul, and your hereafter. When we speak about kindness in Islam, many people automatically assume that being kind means being soft, smiling at everyone, forgiving endlessly, and never showing firmness. While this idea sounds nice, it is incomplete and misleading. Islam indeed encourages kindness, but it is not blind kindness. It is guided by wisdom, justice, and clear boundaries. Allah Almighty does not want His servants to be abused, oppressed, or taken advantage of in the name of being kind. Rather, He wants us to act with intelligence, knowing when to show compassion and when to draw the line. True kindness is not about pleasing people at any cost. It is about pleasing Allah by following His commands and practicing mercy in the right way. Think about it this way: if someone is committing a crime, spreading corruption or harming others, and you simply smile at them, forgive them, and let them continue, is that really kindness? No, it is actually cruelty, because you are allowing harm to persist. Islam teaches that kindness must serve a higher purpose. It must lead to goodness, healing, and peace, not to the continuation of evil. Allah mentions in the Quran that He does not love the oppressors, and He commands believers not to support them. If kindness were to be given unconditionally, even to oppressors, then what would be the meaning of justice? Justice and kindness go hand in hand. True kindness sometimes means stopping someone from doing wrong, even if it feels harsh. That way, you save them from sin and save others from harm. Blind kindness can also be dangerous for your own soul. Some people are naturally gentle, and they end up tolerating disrespect, abuse, humiliation over and over again because they believe being kind means never saying no. But Islam is a religion of balance. The Prophet Muhammad was the most merciful man, but he never allowed others to trample over his dignity or over the dignity of Islam. When kindness was appropriate, he showed it in the most beautiful way. When firmness was needed, he stood strong and made decisions that may have seemed harsh, but they were full of wisdom and divine guidance. If our Prophet had balanced kindness with strength, then surely we too must understand that kindness without limits is not true mercy. Another important point to reflect on is that Allah Himself is our Rahman, the most merciful, and our Rahim, the most compassionate, but he is also Al-Adl, the most just, and Al-Jabbar, the compeller. He rewards, but he also punishes. He forgives, but he also holds people accountable. This teaches us that mercy must always be balanced with justice. If Allah, in His perfection, does not extend the same kindness to everyone regardless of their actions, then how can we think that we, as limited human beings, must show kindness without boundaries? Islam teaches us to mirror the divine attributes in our character within the limits of humanity. Be merciful, but also uphold justice. Be forgiving, but also firm when the situation demands it. True kindness in Islam is purposeful. It means helping someone grow, protecting the weak, defending the truth, and being compassionate to those who deserve compassion. It is not about enabling wrongdoing, nor is it about pleasing people who mock your faith, abuse your trust, or exploit your softness. Kindness, when misplaced, can become a weapon in the hands of those who want to harm you. That is why Allah commands us to use wisdom. He says in the Quran, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction. Notice how wisdom comes before even good advice, because without wisdom, even good actions can cause harm. So, when Islam tells us to be kind, it does not mean turning into a person who never says no. It does not mean keeping toxic people in your life just to prove that you are forgiving. It does not mean tolerating injustice because you are afraid of conflict. Islam wants you to be kind in a way that is rooted in dignity, honor, and truth. If someone deserves mercy, give it generously. If someone deserves forgiveness, forgive with an open heart. But if someone is abusing you, if someone is committing injustice, then the kindest thing you can do for yourself, for them, and for society is to stop them, to distance yourself, or to speak the truth firmly. That is the balance Islam calls us to maintain. My brothers and sisters, understand this. Kindness is powerful when it is guided by wisdom and boundaries. Without those, it becomes weakness. And Islam does not want you to be weak. Islam wants you to be strong, dignified, merciful, and just. Your blind kindness is not true kindness. It is a lack of understanding. Real kindness is knowing when to smile and when to be firm, when to forgive and when to hold accountable, when to embrace and when to walk away. That is the kind of kindness that pleases Allah and elevates your soul. When we talk about kindness and compassion, many people assume that it means keeping a gentle smile and a soft heart towards absolutely everyone, no matter what they do. But Islam teaches us a deeper truth. Smiling at oppression, tolerating abuse, or showing friendliness to those who rebel against all is not kindness. It is weakness, and in some cases it is even sinful. Allah warns us directly in the Quran, do not incline towards those who do wrong, lest the fire should touch you. This verse is a clear command that we must never support oppression in any form. Smiling at a wrongdoer, showing them comfort, or pretending everything is fine only gives them strength to continue their wrongdoing. That is not mercy, and it is certainly not justice. Imagine a person who is abusing the weak. If you smile at them, if you remain silent, if you act as though nothing is happening, what message are you sending? You are indirectly telling them, carry on, I will not stop you. That is why Islam prohibits this kind of false kindness. It is not only harmful to the victim of oppression, but also to the oppressor themselves, because they are being encouraged to dig deeper into sin. True mercy for such a person is to stop them, to resist them, and if needed, to cut ties with them until they change their ways. The Prophet Muhammad was the most merciful of all human beings, yet when he faced those who mocked Allah, those who oppressed the weak, or those who spread corruption, he was never soft in a way that allowed them to carry on. He forgave when forgiveness was wise, but he also confronted when confrontation was needed. He corrected wrongdoers, he stood up for justice, and he did not let his mercy be mistaken for weakness. That is the example we are supposed to follow. Being kind does not mean letting injustice pass. Being kind does not mean giving a free pass to those who destroy lives, spread hatred, or trample on the dignity of others. Sometimes we confuse passivity with piety. We think that by remaining silent, by smiling at everyone, by being endlessly accommodating, we are being righteous. But in reality, this silence often empowers the oppressor. Think about it. If every believer smiled at Pharaoh, would he have ever stopped his tyranny? If every companion smiled at the Quraysh when they tortured Muslims, would Islam have ever survived? Of course not. It was because the Prophet and his companions drew clear lines between truth and falsehood, between justice and injustice, between kindness and firmness, that Islam prevailed. There is a time to smile and there is a time to frown. Allah says about the Prophet in the Quran that he was stern against the disbelievers and merciful among themselves. This balance is critical. With the believers, with those who sought goodness, he was gentle, forgiving, smiling, and compassionate. But with those who were arrogant in their sin, who mocked the truth, who oppressed and spread corruption, he was firm, strong, and unwavering. This teaches us that Islam does not call for blanket kindness. It calls for wise kindness, selective kindness, kindness where it brings benefit and strength, not where it causes harm or compromise. When you smile at oppression, you are not only harming others, but you are also harming your own heart. You are desensitizing yourself to injustice. Slowly you begin to normalize it. What once shocked you becomes something you accept silently. Before long, you are no longer standing with the oppressed, but standing aside, allowing harm to spread. This is why Allah commands believers to enjoin what is good and forbid what is evil. Smiling at evil is not forbidding it. It is in fact encouraging it. We must also remember that strength in Islam does not mean cruelty. It means standing firm with dignity and fairness. You do not need to be rude or harsh to resist oppression, but you must be clear. There is a difference between being merciful and being spineless. A believer is merciful to those who deserve mercy, but when faced with injustice, a believer becomes like a mountain, firm and unshakable. That firmness itself is a form of kindness because it protects society, it protects the victims, and it even protects the oppressor from falling deeper into sin. So, my brothers and sisters, never mistake weakness for kindness. Do not smile at oppression. Do not support wrongdoing with silence. Do not let your mercy be manipulated into acceptance of evil. Stand firm, speak the truth, and know that Allah loves justice. Be kind in the right place, but when faced with oppression, your kindness must take the form of resistance, dignity, and strength. That is what Islam teaches us. That is what will protect your faith, your honor, and your hereafter. Forgiveness is one of the greatest virtues in Islam. Allah Himself tells us in the Quran that He loves those who forgive. And the Prophet Muhammad said that the strong person is not the one who defeats others in wrestling, but the one who controls himself when angry. Forgiving those who wrong you can bring immense peace to your heart and elevate your rank with Allah. But at the same time, forgiveness must never be misunderstood as allowing people to continuously harm you, abuse you, or trample over your dignity. Forgiveness is noble, but not when it enables abuse or corruption. Islam teaches us balance. Forgive when it brings goodness, but be firm when forgiveness only opens the door to more harm. Sometimes people use religion as a weapon to keep others silent. They say, you are a believer, so you must forgive me no matter what I do. Or they insist that forgiving without limits is a sign of piety. But this is not true. Forgiveness is meant to heal, not to chain you in cycles of pain. Forgiveness is meant to protect your heart from hatred, not to enslave you to an oppressor. The Prophet forgave countless people in his lifetime, but he also knew when forgiveness would be taken advantage of. He forgave those who came with sincere regret, but he stood firm against those who repeatedly violated agreements, betrayed trust, or spread harm among the people. That firmness was itself a form of wisdom and justice, and in many cases it saved the community from destruction. If you forgive someone who has wronged you once and they change their behavior, that is a beautiful act of mercy. If you forgive someone who keeps making mistakes but sincerely repents each time, that too can be noble. But if you keep forgiving someone who abuses you without remorse, who manipulates your kindness, who laughs at your softness and continues harming you or others, then that forgiveness is no longer virtuous. It is enabling. It is giving power to wrongdoing. It is indirectly supporting sin. Islam does not ask you to be complicit in your own oppression. Allah does not love to see His servants humiliated again and again in the name of forgiveness. Forgiveness is also not always immediate. Some wounds are deep. Some betrayals take years to heal. Islam does not force you to forgive instantly. You are allowed to take time to heal, to process your pain. You are even allowed to seek justice before choosing forgiveness. Allah has given you the right to defend yourself and the right to seek justice. Forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation in every circumstance. Sometimes, the most merciful thing you can do for yourself and others is to refuse forgiveness until the oppressor has faced consequences. That way, you protect yourself, you protect others, and you set a boundary that cannot be crossed again. The Prophet forgave the Quraysh after years of persecution when Makkah was conquered. But why? Because their power was broken. Their arrogance was humbled, and many had already embraced Islam. His forgiveness in that moment was transformative. It brought healing, and it opened the doors of Islam to many hearts. It was not enabling oppression, it was sealing an era of hostility and starting a new chapter of mercy. Compare that to how he dealt with the hypocrites of Medina who consistently plotted against the Muslims. He exposed them, he distanced himself, and he warned others about them. That too was a form of wisdom. Forgiveness, therefore, is never about turning a blind eye to harm. It is about choosing mercy where mercy will bring real good, and choosing firmness where forgiveness would only invite more corruption. Many people struggle because they think holding someone accountable contradicts forgiveness. But this is not the case. You can forgive in your heart and still demand justice. You can release hatred from within while ensuring that harm is not repeated. You can let go of personal revenge but still uphold boundaries. Islam allows you to seek justice and protect yourself, while at the same time keeping your heart clean from bitterness. That balance is the beauty of our faith. So remember, forgiveness is powerful, but it must be wise. It must be guided by the principles of justice and dignity. Forgiveness is not about making yourself weak in front of those who abuse you. It is about freeing your heart from hatred, while also protecting yourself and others from ongoing harm. If forgiveness will stop evil, then forgive. If forgiveness will reform someone, then forgive. But if forgiveness will only strengthen oppression, then the noblest choice is to be firm, to set boundaries, and to let justice take its course. That too is Islam. That too pleases Allah. The life of the Prophet Muhammad is the greatest example of balance between mercy and firmness. He was described in the Quran as a mercy to the worlds, and his companions testified that he was the most gentle, loving, and compassionate of people, yet at the same time he was never weak in the face of injustice, oppression, or sin. His life shows us that true mercy is not about always being soft, nor is it about always being harsh. It is about knowing when to forgive and when to be firm, when to extend kindness and when to stand your ground. That balance is what Islam calls us to practice in our own lives. Think about the way the Prophet treated his enemies in Mecca. They mocked him, insulted him, called him names, and even physically harmed him. Yet he often responded with patience, prayer, and forgiveness. When the people of Taif rejected him and threw stones until he bled, he did not curse them. Instead, he prayed for their guidance. That was mercy. But at the same time, when people waged war against the Muslims, when they tried to destroy Islam, when they betrayed agreements, the Prophet did not smile and walk away. He stood up with courage. He organized defenses. He spoke the truth clearly. That was firmness. He never confused mercy with weakness, nor did he confuse firmness with cruelty. This balance can also be seen in his leadership. With his companions, he was incredibly kind. He listened to their concerns. He joked with them. He shared their struggles and he treated them with respect. Yet, when someone crossed a limit, when hypocrisy threatened the community, or when injustice appeared, he acted with clarity and strength. He corrected mistakes directly. He called out wrongdoing openly. He even distanced himself from those whose behavior posed a danger to the Ummah. This shows us that mercy does not mean ignoring the truth. Mercy without firmness is incomplete. Sometimes we think being merciful means letting people do whatever they want without consequences. But the Prophet assures us that this is not true. For example, he forgave many of his enemies after the conquest of Makkah. But that was after years of struggle, after their arrogance had been broken, and after they were in a position to actually change. His forgiveness then was transformative because it came at the right time. But when he dealt with people who consistently broke treaties, such as the hypocrites of Medina, he was cautious and firm. He exposed their plots and warned others. He did not offer the kind of forgiveness that would allow them to keep harming the Muslims. His mercy was guided by wisdom. This is a lesson for us in our daily lives. There will be people who wrong us. Some may deserve forgiveness because they are sincere. They regret what they did and they seek to make amends. In those cases, forgiving them can be healing for both sides. But there will also be people who use your kindness against you, who manipulate your softness, and who return to the same harmful behavior again and again. With them, firmness is required. It may seem harsh, but in reality it is a form of mercy because it protects you, it sets boundaries, and it may even wake them up to change. The Prophet also demonstrated that firmness can exist without hatred. Even when he confronted his enemies, he never allowed his heart to be filled with personal bitterness. His firmness was always for the sake of Allah, for the protection of truth, and for the betterment of society. That is why, when the right time came, he was able to forgive with a clean heart. This is the kind of firmness that Islam teaches us, principled, dignified, and free of vengeance. If we only show mercy without firmness, we risk becoming victims of injustice and enabling harm. If we only show firmness without mercy, we risk becoming cruel and hard-hearted. The Prophet avoided both extremes. His mercy made people love him, while his firmness made people respect him. This balance built the foundation of the Muslim community and spread Islam across the world. It is this same balance that will protect us in our lives today. So, when you think about mercy, remember that it is not about allowing yourself to be abused. And when you think about firmness, remember that it is not about being harsh or cruel. It is about following the example of the Prophet, merciful when mercy brings good, firm when firmness protects the truth, and always guided by wisdom. That is the balance Islam calls us to. And that is the balance that will bring success in this world and the next. A believer is someone who lives with dignity and honor, because Islam teaches us to value ourselves as servants of Allah. Part of that dignity is knowing when to be gentle and when to be strong. Too often people think being a good Muslim means always being quiet, always being soft, always letting things go. But this is not the full picture of Islam. A believer is not someone who is walked over. A believer is not someone who allows people to humiliate them again and again in the name of kindness. Rather, a believer has self-respect. And that self-respect means understanding when gentleness will bring benefit and when strength is required to protect the truth, your dignity, and your peace. Gentleness is a beautiful quality. The Prophet Muhammad said that Allah loves gentleness in all matters, and that gentleness is never found in a thing except that it beautifies it. That means when you are dealing with people in everyday life, when there is room for compassion, when someone makes a small mistake, or when a person is genuinely struggling, your gentleness can inspire them, comfort them, and bring them closer to goodness. Gentleness can calm an angry heart, heal a wounded soul, and prevent conflict from escalate. There is no doubt that it is one of the most powerful qualities a believer can have. But gentleness does not mean weakness. It does not mean tolerating abuse. It does not mean that you keep quiet when someone mocks your faith, exploits your kindness, or violates your rights. In those moments, strength is required. And strength does not mean losing control or lashing out in anger. True strength is calm, firm, and dignified. It is the ability to say no when no is necessary. It is the courage to cut off relationships that harm your faith. It is the wisdom to walk away from people or places that drag you into sin. That is strength. Self-respect in Islam means you understand that Allah has honored you. He has made you a believer, someone who carries His words in your heart. How can you allow people to disrespect you repeatedly and call it kindness? How can you allow someone to cross boundaries again and again and say, I am just being merciful? Real mercy is to show people the limits that Allah has set. Real dignity is to be soft where softness is a blessing, but unshakable when firmness is the only option. The Prophet showed us countless examples of this balance. He was so gentle with children, with his family, and with those who sought forgiveness. His companions said they never saw him harsh unless the commands of Allah were violated. When the truth of Islam was mocked or when the oppressed were mistreated, he became firm. His firmness was not out of arrogance or ego, but out of loyalty to Allah and protection of justice. That is why people respected him so much. They knew his kindness was sincere, but they also knew his strength was unwavering. For us today, this means we must learn to set boundaries. If you are always gentle without strength, people will eventually take advantage of you. They will use your kindness as a tool to harm you. And if you are always strong without gentleness, you will push people away and close doors of mercy. The believer is balanced. You smile when it is time to smile. You remain silent when silence protects peace. But you speak up when truth must be spoken. You say no when something crosses the line. You are soft when it brings goodness, but strong when strength is needed. This balance is what protects your self-respect. We live in a world where many people mistake weakness for kindness. They think staying quiet while being mistreated is piety. But Islam does not ask us to be weak. Islam asks us to be honorable. Sometimes the most merciful thing you can do for yourself and even for others is to stop being gentle with someone who abuses your gentleness. Because by drawing a line, you protect yourself and you give them a chance to realize they're wrong. If you keep tolerating harm, they may never change. But if you show strength, it might be the very wake-up call they need. So, my brothers and sisters, understand this: being a believer is not about being kind all the time without boundaries. It is about being wise enough to know when kindness will benefit and when strength will protect you. Self-respect is part of faith. Allah has not created you to be a doormat. He has created you to be an honored servant of His, someone who carries both mercy and dignity. Live with that balance, and you will find people respect you. You will protect your soul, and most importantly, you will please Allah, who loves believers who carry themselves with honor. Strength in Islam is not about how loud you can shout, how hard you can hit, or how forcefully you can argue. True strength is about control, discipline, and principled action. The Prophet Muhammad defined strength when he said that the strong person is not the one who overpowers others in wrestling, but the one who controls himself when he is angry. This hadith completely changes the way we think about strength. It shows us that real power is not in physical dominance or emotional outbursts, but in the ability to hold yourself back, to act with wisdom, and to channel your energy in the right way at the right time. Many people mistake impulsiveness for strength. They think reacting instantly, shouting back, or lashing out is a sign of courage. In reality, this often leads to regret. How many relationships are broken because of words said in anger? How many people lose opportunities because they could not control their temper? How many situations become worse because someone acted without thinking? This is not strength, it is weakness disguised as power. The one who truly has strength is the one who feels the heat of anger boiling inside but refuses to let it control him. Instead, he remembers Allah, he breathes, he thinks, and then he responds in a way that is measured, fair, and guided by principle. Principled action means you act according to what Allah loves, not according to your emotions. You do not let hatred make you unjust, and you do not let love make you blind. Allah says in the Quran, do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. Be just. That is near to righteousness. This verse shows us the heart of principled strength. Even when someone has wronged you, even when your heart is filled with pain, you still hold on to justice because Allah commands it. That is true strength. It is easy to act out of revenge. It is easy to let emotions dictate your behavior. But it takes real discipline to rise above those emotions and act with fairness. Look at the example of the Prophet during the conquest of Makkah. He had every reason to seek revenge against the Quraysh who had persecuted him and his companions for years. Yet when he entered Makkah victorious, he declared amnesty for most of them. This was not weakness. This was principled strength. He had the power to destroy them, but he chose forgiveness at that moment because it would bring greater good. His action was not based on ego, but on wisdom and divine guidance. That is what true strength looks like: the ability to control your desires and act in a way that benefits faith, society, and the hereafter. On the other hand, There were times when the Prophet A showed firmness and refused forgiveness because mercy in that situation would have been taken as weakness and would have encouraged further harm. His life was a perfect balance of controlled responses, never extreme, always principled. This teaches us that strength is not about choosing softness all the time or harshness all the time, but about choosing what Allah loves in each moment, guided by self-control. For us, living with this kind of strength means we have to practice patience daily. When someone insults you, it may feel powerful to insult them back, but real strength is staying silent or responding with dignity. When anger rises, it may feel powerful to slam doors, raise your voice, or lash out, but real strength is calming yourself, seeking refuge in Allah, and only speaking when you can speak wisely. When faced with temptation, it may feel easier to give in, but real strength is holding back and remembering your principles. Every time you control yourself for the sake of Allah, you become stronger in faith, and Allah raises your status. Strength is also about consistency. Anyone can act with control once or twice. The believer trains himself to live this way every day. You build strength by practicing it in small situations. Controlling your tongue when annoyed, being patient in traffic, showing discipline in your prayers, restraining your eyes from what is forbidden. These small acts of control build up and prepare you for the bigger challenges of life. By living with control, you protect your relationships, you protect your heart from regret, and you protect your faith from being damaged by rash action. So my brothers and sisters, do not be fooled by the world's definition of strength. Strength is not loudness, not aggression, not intimidation. Strength is dignity, patience, justice, and discipline. It is the ability to choose the path that pleases Allah even when your emotions push you in another direction. That is the strength that will carry you through hardships, protect your soul, and make you honored in the sight of Allah. Train yourself to control your anger, to act with principle, and to respond with wisdom. That is true strength, and it is the mark of a true believer. Kindness is one of the most beautiful qualities a believer can have. But kindness in Islam is never unconditional. It must always align with the commands of Allah. If kindness leads you to compromise your faith, if it pushes you to accept falsehood, if it makes you support something that Allah has forbidden, then that is no longer kindness, it is disobedience. Islam teaches us that true kindness is rooted in truth, justice, and sincerity to Allah. Anything outside of that is not the mercy Allah loves, no matter how gentle or sweet it may look on the surface. Too often people believe being kind means pleasing everyone. They think they must agree with people even when they go against Islam. They fear being seen as harsh or judgmental, so they stay silent in the face of wrong, or worse, they smile at it. But Allah reminds us clearly in the Quran, do not cooperate in sin and transgression, but cooperate in righteousness and piety. This means that if your so-called kindness is encouraging sin, if your politeness is protecting falsehood, then you are no longer being kind in the Islamic sense. You are indirectly supporting what Allah has forbidden. That is not kindness, it is weakness, and it is dangerous for your faith. Real kindness sometimes requires you to say things people do not want to hear. It might mean you advise someone to stop what they are doing. It might mean you refuse to join in when others are engaging in something harmful. It might mean distancing yourself from gatherings where Allah is mocked or His laws are ignored. At first glance, people may say you are being rude or harsh, but in truth, you are being merciful. You are protecting yourself and them from the anger of Allah. You are showing that your loyalty is to the truth, not to people's desires. Look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad. He was the kindest man. Yet he never compromised the commands of Allah in the name of kindness. When people mocked the Quran, he did not smile and pretend it was fine. When people worshipped idols, he did not say, let's respect everyone's choice equally. If it meant hiding the truth, he treated people with dignity, yes, but he always spoke the truth clearly, even when it made others angry. His kindness was real because it was rooted in honesty and sincerity. He never let kindness turn into compromise. Kindness that compromises faith is actually harmful, both to you and to the person you are trying to please. Imagine seeing someone walk toward a fire. Is it kindness to smile at them, encourage them, and let them keep going? Or is it kindness to warn them, even if they dislike your warning? Of course, real kindness is to save them from harm, even if it makes them uncomfortable in the moment. In the same way, true kindness in Islam is helping people stay on the path of Allah, not supporting them on the road to destruction. This does not mean we should be rude, harsh, or arrogant. Islam teaches balance. When advising, we use gentle words. When correcting, we do it with wisdom. When we disagree, we maintain dignity. But we never twist kindness into approval of what Allah has forbidden. We never let our politeness become cooperation with sin. That line must always be clear in our hearts and in our actions. Many people today are pressured to compromise. They fear rejection, so they stay quiet when their faith is mocked. They fear losing relationships, so they tolerate abuse or wrongdoing. They fear being labeled unkind, so they support falsehood with a smile. But the believer knows that kindness is not defined by people's standards, it is defined by Allah's commands. If Allah is pleased with your action, it is true kindness. If Allah is displeased, then no matter how polite or gentle it looks, it is not kindness at all. True kindness is to stand with what Allah loves. It is to protect your deen and protect others from harm. It is to show mercy without betraying the truth. It is to forgive without enabling abuse. It is to be gentle without allowing falsehood. This kind of kindness may not always be appreciated in the moment, but it will bear fruit in the long run because it pleases Allah, and anything done for Allah's sake is never wasted. So my brothers and sisters, do not let kindness be a trap that drags you into compromise. Do not let the fear of offending people lead you to offend Allah. Do not confuse approval of sin with mercy. True kindness is honest, principled, and aligned with the commands of your Lord. If you are kind in this way, you will have peace in your heart, respect from the righteous, and the pleasure of Allah in this world and the next. That is the only kindness worth pursuing.